Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm glad.
Did we just lose? Did we just lose him?
I think we froze, but that's okay. Usually takes a second.
Perfect timing too.
Yeah, it was like ready, go. Yeah.
Take two.
Good.
Oh no,
Oh no.
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, you are
You're
back.
you're back.
Okay, guess who's back? Noach's back. Okay. All right, hopefully we'll hold off. I'm in the funny room over here. Okay, so we have a double portion called Achrei Mos and Kedoshim. Achrei Mos mostly opens up and deals mostly with the Yom Kippur service that was done by the Kohen. It does remember we discussed a while ago about the two different kinds of goats that they had, identical goats. One would get pushed off a cliff. One would basically go run free, and there was one aspect of the service, and then the rest of the service that's done by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. That's the main gist of Achrei Mos. There's a few other topics towards the end. The second portion is Kedoshim, which literally means holy. Kedoshim Tihiyu, holy you shall be. Which you'll see in tomorrow's email if you guys ever see it, goes through most of the interpersonal laws that we have. Mishpatim, which we talked about towards the end of Shemos, end of the Exodus book, talked about a lot of the classic court cases you'd have, damages to another person and some of the when your stuff damages somebody else. You'd have those kinds of things. But over here, it talks about most famously is love thy neighbor as thyself, the ahavta l'reacha kamocha, right? Which is obviously from the most famous parts of the Torah. It also, even though we finished up the last Torah portions of talking about lashon hara and using our mouths and words properly, this one also brings up one of those concepts, and it's very interesting the way the Torah brings it up. The quote, the verse for you. It says, "Lo selech rachil ba'amecha," which means you shall not go about as a talebearer among your people. And it's an interesting language of it. Really, they give the idea of somebody being like a peddler that's got something that he wants to sell. What does he want to sell? He wants to sell you some National Enquirer type of information. True, not true, embellished, exaggerated, all those kinds of things. It doesn't matter. But his goal is to bring bad news and gossip around. He spreads it around. So that's the slanderer that we talk about. So a lot of the commentaries on the Torah portion, they really spend a lot of time digging into how this really, like these two Torah portions, speak to two different aspects of our service, which we've talked about many times. The idea of Bein Adam LaMakom, our relationship between ourselves and God, and Bein Adam LaChavero, our relationship between man and his fellow. Those are two aspects. We have three relationships in our lives. Rabbi Dr. Torsky talks about three relationships that we have between myself and Hashem, between myself and others, and then there's between myself and me. That's the third relationship that I need to take care of and work on. And it's interesting how the mitzvah that brings out the way that we're supposed to deal with others and view others and be sensitive to others, even have a hafta, to have a love for others, it compares it to ourselves. The hafta l'recha kamocha, right? Love thy neighbor, love thy friend as thyself. It's a comparison to the self, which I find so interesting how when we're going to talk about the way that we relate to others, it has some sort of dependency or something about how we're supposed to look at ourselves to see how we deal with others. In fact, the Gemara, the Talmud, when it talks about this mitzvah, when it talks about Hillel and Shammai, a dispute that they had, there's a famous story about how a Gentile he came up, it was like a Friday afternoon, and he came to the rabbi and he said, "Rabbi, teach me the whole Torah on one foot." So basically Shammai, sent them away sternly and strongly. And Hillel was very welcoming and soft. And he said, "Oh, sure, you know what the answer is? The answer is Coleman says, that which you would not do to others, right? Sorry, that which you don't want done to you, don't do to others. So that's the language that he uses. And then he says, look, the rest of the Torah and the mitzvahs after that, they really come to fill in or to be built upon that. But the main role, the main, thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to one's Judaism, one's, becoming the best person that they can be, is dependent on things that you don't want done to you, don't do to somebody else. Sounds pretty simple, right? A lot easier than said. But I find it very interesting how it's related to the way we look at ourselves, the way that we deal with ourselves. And it's interesting how for ourselves, when I talk to teenagers about this in the past, I think we discussed this in past years. When I throw this verse out there, then there's always either they say, I think very often they'll say it in a sarcastic fashion, but unfortunately, I think there's a lot of truth to it nowadays. Well, they say, well, Rabbi, what if I don't really love myself? Or what if I don't think that the way I think about myself is really actually a good way to think about others? Right. So obviously the answer is that that's not healthy. Right.
Mm.
A person's self-view, right? A person's self-image, a person's self-talk, all those types of language, figure out what you want to say, right? What words you want to, what terminology you want to use. But that obviously we say chayecha kodmin, your chai, your life comes first, which means you need to be taking care of yourself. Person needs to be taking care of themselves, right? And every person has different needs and different wants and different talents, different skills, and so on and so forth. But a number one priority in life is a person needs to take care of themselves, because as we always say, if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to be able to help anybody else? And in fact, Maimonides, perhaps at some point we talked about this, Maimonides' intro to the Pirkei Avos, to Ethics of the Fathers, the book of Ethics of the Fathers, we've talked about in the past few weeks, he over there talks about how there's a medium in there. There's such a thing as being too kind. And there's such a thing, obviously, as being too stingy. But too kind, what do you mean too kind, right? Maimonides, Rambam, what are you talking about, too kind? And the answer is, you can only give your shirt off your back, right? That depends how cold it is outside. Because if you give your shirt off your back and then you yourself freeze, then that means that you can't keep doing good things, right? You got to take care of yourself first. A person needs to make sure they take care of themselves. And then it requires a person to be honest with themselves of what that means to take care of yourself, right? Does that mean going after every desire and lust in the world? Does it mean becoming a multi-billionaire? I don't know. Everyone has different things, but a person needs to be honest about it and ask themselves those questions. But that's the first step. What is the kamocha? And one of my favorite ideas about v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, my favorite answers is because it's in a healthy situation, it's not possible for you to love someone the way that you love yourself. This is not possible, right? Maybe you could talk about, a child to a parent. They'd be willing to do crazy things for their parent, or perhaps a spouse, right? Or a child, right? We would do crazy things. But in general, to love your average person the way that you love yourself, that's really not possible. So what can it mean? So what it means, one idea that's been shared, I think it comes from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I believe he's the one that shares it, and we'll end with this. He says, there are things when it comes to dealing with ourselves that we are so giving, and we come up with every excuse in the book about ourselves. We're always judging ourselves favorably, right? We always have some sort of excuse for our actions. We're so quick and so imaginative when it comes to the way that we do things, right? The way that we behave. And then we sit and find a million excuses why we behave that way, when really we know it really was not appropriate, right? But we're so easy to find excuses for ourselves. Best example would be the way that we look, let's say, right? The way a person looks. And when a person's a healthy person and they see they've got some funky pimple that comes in, let's say, right? I don't know, it lands right on the tip of their nose. They look like Rudolph, right? So, but they'll be like, they'll come up with some excuse to look in the mirror like, it adds character. I mean, I've always wanted to know what a Jewish Rudolph would look like. I mean, we come up with these things for ourselves, but we walk down the street and we saw the dude that had the built-in Rudolph clown nose, right? What do? We
Make
chuckle,
fun
we
of 'em.
smirk, we say, hey, dude, check it out, 6 o'clock, right? Like, this is what we do, right? But why do we do that? The same way that we're so easy to find excuses and to find a way to cover up our mistakes, our problems, our missteps, we need to have that for others and the way that we deal with others. We're so quick to judgment for others. We're so quick to put them down. We're so quick to think of the worst, right? I can't believe a guy would do that. Like, slow down, buddy. Do you know what actually happened to the other side of the story? Like, you have no clue what just happened to that guy or that person, right? So slow down. You have no clue what they're going through, right? Slow down. So this is a one aspect of this mitzvah. And obviously, if we apply this, it really changes the way that we walk around the world. We walk around the world looking at things in a positive fashion. We look at the world instead of jumping to a negative, bad space. We're in a much more positive, right? I'm not going to call it rosy. Oh, it's all rosy and good. It's all great, right? No. But if we practice doing this for ourselves, for others, those around us, we practice like, whoa, take a deep breath before you say something smart. It will really change our relationships and the way that we deal with other people, the way we deal with ourselves, our families, our coworkers, whatever it is, right? If we start to apply this kind of concept, right? Think about how we would want someone to deal with us, right? Envision it for a moment, the way it looked when you yelled at that person, and how would it feel if that person yelled at you, or if you yelled at you? So it's just the Torah obviously wrote it in a very beautiful way to help us on that journey of trying to deal with other people, right? But also dealing with ourselves, which ultimately helps us to deal with Hashem, because these are the three relationships that revolve around our world. So God willing, Bezras Hashem, we are up to, what time is it over here? Oh, not quite. So we still have, it's the end of the 25th day of the Omer, which means we're halfway there, right? We're halfway there. And for Jeffrey can actually count already over here. It's already nighttime, fully nighttime by Jeffrey. So we God willing should merit that we have another half of the journey coming up to get ourselves to Mount Sinai on the holiday of Shavuos. So God willing, we should tap into some of these beautiful lessons, apply it to ourselves, apply it to our lives. And if we do that, it's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fantastic.
Amen.
Even if we're not in Vegas for an awesome concert that two of my friends are at this weekend.
There you
Jason,
go.
I tried to get them to come to you, Jason.
Who's
They both
the
both
concert?
have-
What?
I don't remember which one it is. They both have cousins that are there though, so they're staying with cousins.
Okay.
None of these guys have been on our Thursday night. Otherwise, they would have had to come to Jason. But
They would have had to. Yeah.
I did tell them that if they need at some point they want to check out some good beers, they probably should be in touch.
Any friend of Noach is a friend of mine, so any time if they want to show up, yeah.
I'm gonna remind them.
Sure.
But all right, so everyone should have an awesome Shabbos, an awesome weekend.
Amazing.
And Jason, enjoy the family.
100%. 100%. Very happy to have them here. Mother's Day on Sunday.
Great.
Yeah.
They do that. They do that in Montreal.
Yeah, sure. But I'm not
Okay.
in Montreal. I'm in Vegas. But yes, they do.
I went in Vegas. Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Amazing. Have an awesome Shabbos. Take care, guys.
All right.
Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you.
All the best. Shabbat
Thank you.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.